Welcome to the Youth Ministry in the Vine podcast. I'm Kyle, pastor of family ministry at Old North Church in Canfield, Ohio, and author of Youth Ministry in the Vine, a ministry mind shift for discipling the next generation, published by Matthias Media. This podcast exists to equip youth pastors and volunteers to build biblical, sustainable, and contextual youth ministries. Here we are on another episode of the Youth Ministry in the Vine podcast. This podcast exists to equip youth pastors and volunteers. Emphasis, this is for the volunteers too, because we know youth ministry is about the youth pastor, but also the volunteers, to build biblical, sustainable, and contextual youth ministries. Sai, here we are.
Here we are.
Today is a weekday when we're recording this. This morning we had one of our high school Bible studies and then got some admin work done in the office. I could see you were pretty locked in this morning.
When the doors close, it means you got to lock in, or else we distract each other.
Also, I mean, Bethany, who works with us, I'm walking by, I see her in meeting with you. I want to come in and be part of that.
It's hard to not want to join.
I mean, considering there's like a wall between me and her and then a wall between her and you.
We're yet to establish our linked, cup ear things where you can just talk to, none of this fancy phone stuff.
I think it's
a little cup in the can, string through
it
the
could
wall.
be coming eventually. And then we just came from a meeting, our favorite place to meet, Tequila Jalisco, a Mexican restaurant.
So good. You think better when the food comes out sizzling.
Well, and because we go so often and we told them today, two of us, well, we said menus. But then we said no menus. And the food comes out sizzling. We just talk about sports ministry and thinking how that fit. We got these kids who come in, many of them non-church or not from our church, and how that fits into our family ministry.
But also balancing with our own families and their schedules and busyness, but maximizing their wins with the team.
All that being said, I think we're set up for this conversation. Remind us,
we're going a different direction today.
Episode 3.
Yep.
Tell us where we've been and where we're going.
We talked about the framework of Trellis and the Vine and that language and how it plays out in youth ministry.
Yep.
And then in episode 2, we got to talk about what we'd say are the key and critical ingredients to youth ministry, which is teaching, training, and time.
Yep.
But today, we're not talking about students, are we?
We're talking about
students. About parents. Why, Kyle, would we be talking about parents instead of students?
Yeah, I think the phrase comes to mind, but first, parents. And so one phrase I talk about and I write about in the book and I like to use with people is that the noun pastor is more important than the adjective youth. And so whether you're listening or watching this and you're the youth pastor or some type of youth volunteer in the process, the emphasis is on building a disciple. Normally, we're talking about teenage disciples, hence youth ministry in the Vine. But the goal is to disciple both parents and the students. So I'm in a list of a few things. I'll just give them to you, and then maybe you can pick one or two of them. We can dive in and begin to discuss why we're talking about parents today.
Sounds good.
First, in my time in youth ministry, I have found that the effectiveness of our youth ministry is compounded when we minister to parents. The reason it's compounded when we minister to parents is because parents will always spend more time with the students than you or I ever will as the youth pastors. Second, we realize that ministering to parents can seem awkward at first, but once we get over that initial awkwardness, if we can have an open and honest conversation flow with parents, it can help us understand the students better who we're ministering to. If the parents know the kids better than us, and we can know the parents, then we can minister better to the parents. Third, we're playing the long game here. If we realize that these kids are going to grow up, there's going to come a time when they're out of the youth ministry, and likely we don't know them anymore, but their parents will know them, which shows us the effectiveness and the importance of ministering to parents. And then last, I know sometimes, even though I love being a youth pastor, teenagers can be annoying.
What? Teenagers annoying?
They can be annoying. And what I have found is that in times when I might be discouraged or in times when I'm like, man, I want something more, is if I can minister to parents for a season, maybe it's this week, I'll add a couple of these meetings we're talking about. What it can do is it can help me realize the importance of ministering to students. And I can realize that the parents need encouragement anyways. So this is just kind of, those are a few things. Maybe you want to pick one or two of them we can dive into.
I totally feel the idea of ministry can be awkward when you're trying to minister to a parent that whether they look at you as just some young person, if you're right out of college or newly into it, they just see you with a lot of energy and excitement, which they either segment in their mind or they look at you and they're just like, hey, you don't have a student in your home. And even just the realistic level of, hey, there's just something different about having a student at home. I'm 4 years away from that. So I'm like, hey, I can't wait to actually get to that spot. I'm like, wow, my first middle schooler, I got the countdown going and everything of when that changes. It's just realistically, that changes. And so that's some awkwardness is just going to naturally be there. How can we kind of get past some of those awkwardness? Whether that's just a reality, you can't just go adopt a middle schooler or a high schooler.
Well, I mean, I think about my first year as a youth pastor. I was just at a conference we just hosted. I told the story that I was asking people to pray for me for wisdom when I was in college on what to do next. But I told them that I didn't want to be a youth pastor. And when I told this story to the group of youth workers, they all laughed. And someone came up to me afterwards and they were like, did you actually tell them you didn't want to be a youth? And they thought I just told that as like, a punchline of a joke. And I'm like, no, I actually told them. Like, and I just think about when I first became a youth pastor, especially when I was an intern, 2 days after graduating college. You go from being a college student to now being responsible for these students in a church setting. I remember even those who were high school seniors were only a handful of years younger than me. And so ministering to parents can seem awkward and it can even seem unnecessary because again, you're like, I was hired to be the youth intern or I'm the youth volunteer. I'm not the adult pastor. I'm not teaching adult Sunday school class.
Right.
And so one thing that I realized is it can be helpful, especially in the early years, or especially for people who are older, who are coming into youth ministry later on in life, either vocationally or as a volunteer, to realize early on that if we can take a step back sometimes and realize that God created the family unit and the parents are the primary discipler in the life of the kids. And so now as the youth worker, paid or volunteer, we can now come alongside the parent. I think that can take away some of the awkwardness because we know the lane that we're running in. I think part of the pride that sometimes we as youth pastors can have is we can sometimes want to be everything to the kid. And we can realize, I mean, though even those who are watching and listening, we could all probably share stories where parents might come up to us and some type of flavor of, I was telling my kid this all the time and they weren't listening. And then finally they hear it from you and all of a sudden, boom,
mind blown.
Like light bulb moment. I just got a text message from a mom. And there's a student who I love deeply in our youth ministry. And it was just going through a normal high school time of figuring out, is she following Jesus or not? And what that looks like. And the mom sent me a text message and was like, I don't know when you preached that sermon on this specific thing, but she started using this illustration. And the funny thing about it was, it wasn't even my sermon I preached. It was our college pastor, Bruce, who came in and he taught it. And what that did is in that moment now, when we talk about awkwardness with parents, because I had open and honest communication channel with this mom, now the mom is like, you know what, I'm not competing with Pastor Kyle. Actually, can I share this this story with Pastor Kyle about how something in the youth ministry is affecting? And you know what that did? I mean, that was like shooting caffeine in my veins. Like
because then you realize that you're on the same team, but then you build that bridge so that communication can come back and forth a little more readily as well in the future, whether it's preventative damage that you're not meeting initially to try and say, hey, let's talk about this stuff because there's a problem. You want to get ahead of the problem and be able to communicate then. I mean, it's back to the awkwardness aspect as well. I think that getting in, understanding your lane that you're in, but having the right humility to go alongside saying, I'm serving our families in this way, compared to coming across as a young, even if it's a young guy or girl, is like, oh, I know it. I've studied, I've done well, I know my stuff, and trying to show to the parent through pride, like, no, I've got this. I know what I know. Let me teach you. That's only going to push them away, but to come with instead the humility of, hey, I want to serve these families and be able to care in the long run. Yeah, and
that's why I think the word compounding is important. You know, think about compounding interest, right? You put money in a bank account and the interest comes and then you get interest on the interest. I think when we're ministering to parents, it's compounding our ministry because we're able to encourage the hearts of the parents. And if our ultimate goal, which I write about in the book and it's in the Bible, Colossians 1, right? The ultimate goal is to present these students to Jesus as mature followers of him. If that's the goal, we should want as many mouths speaking truth to them as possible. And so it's a no-brainer to have open communication with the parents and how to minister to the kids. I think the question that a lot of us in youth ministry struggle with is not the what, but the how.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I don't know the exact study now. It's been out for several years, but where they looked at all these successful people and came to the common denominator that there were 5 caring adults in their life that spoke truth, that spoke ultimately God's truth and God's wisdom into their life as a big part of that. And if you think of one kid having 2 godly parents, that's only 2, right? You can think of a coach, a youth worker, as being a couple others.
Blended families where and kids who might not have parents who aren't following the Lord.
Yeah, but be able to come alongside them and encourage them, link arms, so to say, not to pull them in a different direction or to create your own silo of a ministry, but to come alongside the parents and think long term, which is another one of the things you talked about. Play the long game, which I feel like is so hard in a productive world that's all about getting quick results,
urgent,
and the urgency, and especially too sometimes in the youth workers world you have to show results quickly sometimes, or be able to show and present things, but it's like no, we're trying to play the long game.
Well, and I was just sending a message to a parent this morning where I was trying to think if it was an honest statement that my favorite and least favorite thing, or maybe a way to make it honest would be one of my favorite yet least favorite things of youth ministry is how kids are moving through the system, right? Like meaning, assuming they graduate high school, that's the goal, right? Like they're no longer in youth ministry anymore. And so like that can be helpful to see them progress and then, send them out. But then like one of the worst is like, man, I just finally really started to understand this student. And this one family in particular, they have a senior and they have an 8th grader who's about to come up to high school. And so as we think about the kid who's graduating, now I was like, hey, can we meet to talk about that next kid? Because I need to, always be thinking ahead and again think, okay, let's have a conversation now so that as the kid gets older and different things come up, we can point back to this point, which is a little bit about what we do here when we think about Parent Connect meetings.
Yeah. I feel like I'm just trying to think on the other side. If you're thinking just short term, you look for big decisions being made just in your time. You feel like there's a unhealthy urgency to push for things that maybe they're not actually ready for.
That's right.
Or where they're at. You look for those big types of conversations and moments in their life as well. But you also look for a lot of big glamorous decisions and things you get to do and prioritizing those over what they're actually struggling with in their life. You hear less and speak more when you're trying to make quick decisions and look in the short term compared to the long game, which takes a lot more patience, humility, and time.
And I think the long game, when we think about, but first parents, the long game is, unless like maybe if you're like the youth pastor of like a niece or nephew of yours or your own kid, like these parents have been invested in the kids' lives long before we were as youth pastors, right? And long before. And so I think when I think of long game, I think of the parents parenting them into the future, but I often underplay the fact, and I think even having our own kids, it makes it, I think I met with a child of another pastor recently, and I just had me thinking recently, like, man, how I would want someone to treat my kid if they're talking about my kid about the most important things. Absolutely. And so I think the long game works both ways, that as we think about parents who have known the kid since before it was born, and then now the kid is a teenager. And we know that you talk to any parent of teenagers, say their bodies are changing, their emotions are changing, their school is changing, all of this is changing. How can we as youth pastors and volunteers be a constant for them, and what that looks like? So
you mentioned Parent Connect. Let's lean into that. You wrote a whole article for Rooted, and it's titled here, Youth Minister, Consider Rethinking Your Parent Meetings This Year. What was the goal of that? Why did you write that? What's this idea of Parent Connects?
Well, I think that when I think about connecting with parents, my preferred method would be to have a parent meeting. Send an email out on this Sunday at 4 p.m. before youth group.
Cast the net wide.
Cast the net wide. Come in. We'll even have coffee. We'll even have Starbucks coffee or whatever local.
You can convince them. There's the bait.
Yes, come in. Like, I think that's my preferred, because, again, I love ministering to students, but I also love ministering to adults. And so that would be my preferred method. Yeah. But I think one thing we realize is most youth workers, and I think even coaches and just people in general would realize that sometimes when you have meetings like that, the people who actually show up to the meetings are the people who technically wouldn't need to be there.
They already got all the info. They know what they're doing.
It would be kind of like preaching a sermon, and I'm not even suggesting to do this, but this is an illustration, like preaching a sermon, I mean, it would probably be helpful, on whether people idolize sports or not. And then it'd be like, well, the people who really need to hear that are at the ones going to sports.
Right. And the ones you want at the parent meeting, you really need to know and want to be there.
Yeah,
don't end up making it.
Similarly, that would be my preferred method. But kind of what happened is when I was at my previous church, here I am, young, overconfident Kyle. And one thing changed for me where there was a dad who was at the church on a random weekday afternoon. I think actually the church, there was like a sign-up sheet where they could sign up to like mow the grass. So we didn't have to like hire people to do that, volunteer. I think maybe a sign of a healthy church is that volunteers doing stuff. And I think the dad was outside mowing the grass or something. And I just said hi to him when I think I was walking to my car after work. And he opened up to me that one of his children was facing a mental health crisis. I think was in the hospital at the time. And for some reason, I look at that as a turning point because what that did for me is it realized I need to be listening to parents. And I think it's possible the Lord used that one conversation to help me realize I need to have avenues or lanes in my ministry where not only like a parent meeting, we're doing most of the talking, right? I need to have an avenue where parents can talk to me and I can listen to them. This was organic. Yeah. I'm walking to my car. The dad shares the grief that he was going through. And I think what I realized is, okay, I need to have a place where I can listen to parents. And we joke around, I'm the youth group name Killer. I think we mentioned that on a previous episode. Like, I'm just so basic. And I realized that there is an avenue like that outside the church. And at least where I was at in Pennsylvania, here we are in Ohio now. I think most places around the country have parent-teacher conferences. Right, yeah. And at some point in the school year, usually in the fall and then maybe again in the spring, parents sign up for a time slot. And they go in and they hear how their kids are doing in school, but it's an opportunity for them also to share to the teacher. Yep. And so what happened is I end up here at Old North Church now from the time we're recording this, almost exactly 10 years ago, and approaching 10 years. And I decided we're going to do these things that are like parent-teacher conferences for the parents of high school students. And because I
so creative with names, trying to connect with parents. What do we call it? Parent Connect.
Yes, Parent Connect meetings. So we're going to call them Parent Connect meetings. And what I started doing is I started meeting with parents. It varies, but somewhere around 45 minutes in a time to meet with parents, to talk to them, to share about updates and what's coming. Like, I just had an event this week and some people scheduled something else around the same time. And one of our volunteers, one of my favorite people, said to me, shouldn't the church have a schedule like schools put out schedules? And I'm thinking, yes, this has been on the schedule like this. But like, so similarly, when we meet with parents, we have an opportunity to talk about events and different things coming up and maybe explain the why behind them, but really get an opportunity to hear from them and to what I would consider lowercase c counseling, especially some of us who are young youth pastors or young youth workers, men and women. I would always say, like, if I was pastoring a church, it would be less likely for an older person to come to youth pastor Kyle or to Pastor Kyle to ask for advice in life. But when I realized I was the youth pastor and one of the most important beings in their whole world was their kid, they were willing to come and talk to me about anything about their kid. Right. And it kind of gave a framework to do that. So what happened is, we've been talking about this a lot. Even today, someone emailed me asking how we do these. What happened is I started doing them with the parents of high school students. And then some time went on, and eventually when you came along, we hired you, and we started doing them for high school and middle school students. And then as time went on, I became the pastor of family ministry, and was still primarily working with high schoolers, but leading our family ministry team. Now we're doing them for birth through high school. The parents of these kids and students, meeting with them, parent-teacher style. You know, my daughter, as we're recording this, is a kindergartner, and this fall we had our first parent-teacher conference, and I'm like getting nervous. I'm waiting in the hallway, like here we go. And then I was like, you know, I'm in the teacher might have thought I was insane, because as I'm in there, I'm thinking, wow, this is kind of what you're doing. Yeah, like,
this thing we tried to posture it after, like, oh, we're doing it.
Like
here.
it's a real one. It's not theory.
Yeah.
And so when we think about calling this episode "But First Parents," meaning isn't ministry to students? Well, first let's go to parents. Parent Connect meetings have made all the difference for us.
Yeah. Primarily listening.
Yep.
With some vision casting is a time to do that as well, but primarily listening, hearing from them how you can pray for their kids, which you really can even give us an insight into their heart.
Yeah.
Right? If you ask them, hey, how can we be praying for your kids? That shows us a lot of different things.
Yeah, and I think in the article, which I wrote a few years ago, those who are watching and listening, you can find it on the Rooted Ministry website. I think I break it down into like a third, and a third.
Yeah.
Now, my suggestion to someone, and we'll dive deeper into this in a moment, but what I've learned through doing these now, you know, when I sent an email to someone earlier today about these, we always hear this idea of a Parent Connect meeting. Some people are like, oh, like that's, and I'm like, well, it's taken 8 years to build this to where it is today. I think the right starting point is to set up times with parents where maybe the one question we like to ask is something like, how can I pray for your kid? And like you said, we just get behind the scenes into the heart. Jesus said, it's out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so when we're meeting with parents in these Parent Connect meeting, if we ask, you know, how can we pray for your kid? We can understand the heart posture of the parents, and it can give us an opportunity to know an angle of the kid's life that we might not know.
Yeah. I got some questions I want to ask you.
Let's
Can I do
dive
that?
in.
Dive on in and give you some rapid fire questions.
This is my favorite topic. Yep.
Understanding it, unpacking it for the listener, for those of us saying, hey, maybe I want to do this myself, but there's some things in the way. I got some questions on maybe some hows and going through a little bit of this, and give us what you got. First, let's talk about efficiency. Isn't this inefficient? 1-on-1, 1-on-2. You said the preferred method is the parent meeting where it's just like, hey, we all go to it.
Yeah, preferred would be like, okay, let's just run a scenario. Let's say you have 30 kids in the youth group. You do a parent meeting, and 20 of, you know, maybe there's more than 20 parents because maybe husband and wife, mom and dad come, but all of a sudden you got 66% of the kids represented in 1 hour.
Boom, done.
Where this method, they come in and it's one. So what was the question? Efficiency?
Isn't this inefficient? Is there a better way, or why is this? Why still prioritize this? Is this really a good use of our time? Is it worth it?
This cuts deep to me because I want to be efficient, right? You know me, I am always doing something. It's hard for me to turn my mind off. I think it's inefficient, but I think that meeting with parents, youth pastors or youth volunteers meeting with parents, isn't efficient, but ministry is not about efficiency. Jesus tells us, and Paul specifically in the New Testament shows us that ministry is about people. And if as the youth pastor, our goal is to present the kid mature in Christ, we shouldn't be worried about the most efficient method of getting there. We should be worried about getting there, and how we're going to get there is going to be done better if we understand the parent's relationship with the kid. If we realize that, you know, we could have a kid, I don't think this is a fail story, but when we think about efficiency, I had a mom email me about her son, and I thought her son was doing well spiritually. And actually, no, it wasn't an email or text. I butt dialed her. And so I'm talking to her now, and I'm like, she called me back. She's like, my son's youth pastor called me. I better call back. And I thought her son was doing better than he was. And again, it was like this phone call, to have this phone call with all of these parents is difficult, but it was worth sitting on my couch listening, because in the moment now, we're able to do that. Now, I do want to touch on efficiency here because I think sometimes it's possible for youth workers to be lazy. I think it's also possible for youth workers who maybe have been through the cycle enough where it's like, okay, now we can be lazy. I think when we think about efficiency in Parent Connect meetings, it might not be efficient in our use of time, but it can be efficient because if there are brothers and sisters in the youth group, one thing that can happen here is you can knock out a few at once.
Yeah.
But also, like I think about a family in our church who they had 3 children. And I started doing Parent Connect meetings with the oldest, and then it was the middle, and then it was the youngest. So there was some overlap in them. But I remember just how special it was, that last one, sitting there thinking, this wasn't efficient through the years, but I've now walked with you. At the time, it might have been, 5 or 6 years, so it was all said and done.
Right.
But now I can think right now sitting here of our first meeting, I can think of where we were at in the church and we're talking about a crisis point. And then we had these Parent Connect meetings almost every year. I think we missed 1 year. And we got to the end, it was like, you know what? That wasn't efficient, but this is what Jesus wants. Jesus wants ministers to spend time. The saying, I think it's kind of cliche, but like if a pastor is a shepherd, you got to smell like the sheep.
Yeah.
Well,
it's tricky for middle schoolers.
Yeah, man, 'cause let me tell you, our middle school room stinks on our midweek night. Like, and those who are listening, your middle school room stinks too. I mean, well, okay, but if we know that all illustrations fail at some point. But if the shepherd needs to smell like the sheep, like it would make sense that we can spend time with the parents so we can understand the things that we don't always see. And that's where my recommendation when we think about efficiency, and maybe you're watching this right now and you're thinking, okay, I would like to do a Parent Connect meeting, but I don't know where to start. I would just pick 2 or 3 families in your church that if you asked, hey, can we meet and do this? That they would likely say yes, and start small and see where it builds.
Yeah, I feel like this pushes against the typical cookie cutter kid that you're trying to create. Like, if it's easy, I just create the cookie cutter form and just do the same thing for every kid.
Yes.
Whereas this pushes against that and saying, oh, wait, I'm even just one of the ones Parent Connect I had recently thinking, oh, yeah, every kid loves this particular part of the youth group that we do, this particular event and whatnot, and realize, oh, wait, they hated it. Okay. Well, okay, let's maybe adjust. It's like, what can we do to help come alongside you guys? Because they're different. Because every kid is different, and to push against that cookie cutterness. So I want to get another follow up here. You talked about trying to start with a couple core ones.
Yep.
Well, you mentioned a problem with the parent meeting.
Yep.
Where we miss those that should be there. How do we not fall into that same problem with this? How do we get more than just the usuals to do this?
Now, great question. What comes to mind is the illustration of fishing, which I don't really like fishing.
Are
Do
you a
like
fisherman?
fishing?
No.
Okay.
Sorry,
If
Dad.
you're watching this right now and you're like, okay, these guys are lame. Like, I think it's weird to like pull the fish off.
My dad loved it. I could never get into it. I think I was one of the only kids that just never liked it.
So how I understand fishing, I've obviously been fishing. You went fishing. You went fishing before, right? Okay, so we want to cast the net wide, but then individually fish. Okay, and so what I mean by that is similar to how one time someone was righteously critical of me.
That's a good term.
I'm at least telling myself it was righteous.
Can you call yourself righteously critical, or is that too prideful?
I'm not sure, but this person was righteously critical of me because we were trying to do some small groups and I was only going to invite certain kids. And well, what about the kids you don't invite? And so when I think about these Parent Connect meetings, I think that we can cast the net wide by once people know what Parent Connect meetings are. If your church has a bulletin, you could put it in there. You can send an email to the whole parent email list and say, these are Parent Connect meetings. These are what they are. If you would like to sign one up, whether you use Planning Center Online or whatever church database you use, sign up that way, or just email me to let me know. So then everyone's included, but then go fishing for the people are going to say yes. I'm curious when you think about this. I found that normally when I do Parent Connect meetings, it's easier than to do it with that specific family the next time because we've already done one.
100%.
What does that look like for you?
It definitely tills the soil. And it depends. Each family's different too, depending on if you have an easier route in with the dad or an easier route in with the mom. And to maybe just start with that. Ideally, both could be there because they just both have different perspectives. Even if you think of your own kids and thinking, thinking, hey, yeah, my spouse just sees different things, knows different things, and we'll just remember different things.
So that's a good point. So ideally, we're meeting with both parents.
Yeah.
But I think maybe even a starting point, like you said, is like maybe the dad of one of the students, and then it's like, hey, can we get lunch? Do you want to get coffee after work? Do you want to come in and meet? What does that look like? Yeah. But once you do it, have that parent connect meeting once, that then it's easier to do again into the future. And as we're doing that, the term you mentioned earlier, preventative damage. The reason I use that word when I think about parent connect meetings is not quite a decade ago, a while ago. I had a student who actually the parents weren't involved in her life. And so grandma met with me. Yeah. And so this would be a grandparent connect.
Yeah. Grander in value.
And grandma met with me and told me about the granddaughter's life and just difficulties. And it might have been 3 weeks later, maybe not even, a crisis point came about in that child's life. Yeah. And I realized the importance of having parent connect meetings, or in this case, grandparent connect meetings, because now I already had I hate to use this term, but I think you'll know what I mean, an updated relationship with the parent.
Yes.
Meaning I already knew this grandparent, or if it was a parent, I already knew them, but we just had this conversation 3 weeks ago. Yeah. And now I already knew that there was potential something like this could happen. And all of a sudden, if I'm meeting with a kid, whatever that looks like, the preventative damage, it didn't stop the immediate issue from happening.
Yes.
But it helped us care quicker.
Absolutely. It'll prioritize on the right things.
So maybe that is efficiency.
Yeah, there's efficiency baked in somewhere. At least because on the priorities, on the right things that you're caring for. Because we've all been on the other side.
Yeah.
Where we don't know the parent, we don't know the situation, they don't fully trust us and know what's happening and know why we're doing some certain things. And so we get that clash moment where it's like, well, wait, of course I should be able to do this with my kid. And you're like, well, actually, no, because here's why. I mean, I just had one of those the other week where we had to help them understand why we should wait to do these things, or why they should go through our normal process. Not because we don't love them and care for them. It's actually because we do. Yeah. And so it helps if you can get some of those, not that they're not important, but you're all on the same page first, so that when the storm comes, that foundation is built, so to say.
This is where we can't overemphasize the importance of volunteer youth workers. Yeah. People in the church who are serving maybe as small group leaders or whatever the role is. In the future, I'm sure we'll have conversations about different roles and what that looks like. But if the youth pastor or the main youth worker is the main one doing these parent connect meetings, it is so crucial that the volunteers are also not just always, shielding themselves from the parents. Simple things such as in our church with our family ministry team, we talk about formal parent connect meetings, which might be like, taking someone out for lunch or having them in the office, and it feels like that parent teacher conference. Yes. But we also talk about informal ones where we would say is like more than a 5-minute conversation that has substance. That's something that I think if you're watching this and you're a youth volunteer, you can't overplay or underplay the significance of on a Sunday morning when you're sitting in your pew or your seat, or you're walking to get coffee, or you're walking your child to the bathroom, wherever you're at, if you see parents of teenagers that are in your small group that you shepherd and disciple, just by letting them know that you are their kid's small group leader, I think can go a long way. Absolutely. Because as you said, kids need more than just parents in their life. And I've yet to meet a parent of a teenager that doesn't accept encouragement.
Absolutely. So I got another question for you.
Keep it coming.
Let's talk about how
I love this topic.
We can talk about this for days. So how many times are you doing this a year? Are you trying to get to every parent in your group? Like, obviously each group is different, but what are you shooting for? What's a good target to go for? Yeah. How often are you repeating?
I think that the goal should be 1 per year per family.
1 per year per family.
Now, someone may be listening to this or watching this and saying, Kyle, that's insane. Now, where we're at, we have a rather large church. We don't hit that. I do think this is scalable. I think it's actually possible that in smaller churches you can get further faster because what my experience, now I know my experience hasn't been everywhere, but sometimes smaller churches are knit closer together and maybe have multiple families that it's like we're with our cousins and we're all there. Well, you can get further faster, but the goal would be one Parent Connect meeting per family per year. And like we start our calendar year where we keep track of this in January. Yeah. So January 1, I'm thinking this year of actually moving it to June 1. So any of these meetings that happen in the summer, we're actually forward looking. We're looking into the new school year. And we're doing one of those meetings. Now, of course, I had one this week where it was my second or third meeting with the parent. Right. And something came up recently. I wanted to make sure that we were on the same page and it was well worth the time. Yeah. But one per family per year. And what we do in our church, we started using Google Docs and now, different things, but in a much less formal way that when you go to your doctor, they pull up a chart and they have all your visits in the last whatever. Yeah. We take notes in our Parent Connect meetings. We write them down and then we keep a file going. And this doesn't have to be a file. This could be written down on a paper and you don't have to write, some people might be like, oh, is that an invasion of privacy? Like you don't have to write everything down, just general things where then as you continue meeting, you think, oh, wow, when this kid was in 7th grade, we talked about this. And I mean, so much so I love to share the story that I did a wedding this summer of 2 kids who are no longer in youth ministry, young adults now. And I was pretty sure I remembered that the mom made a comment in a Parent Connect meeting about her daughter beginning to date the guy that now she's going to marry. And so I went back in and I didn't tell the mom and I didn't even tell the kids. And in the wedding ceremony, of course, I changed some of the language and whatever to make it appropriate. And in the wedding, I shared about what the mom said years earlier in a parent meeting about her daughter meeting this good boy and, wasn't sure she's ready for a boyfriend yet. And here we are at the wedding. And it's like, that's what I want. Recently I heard the term about being pro-life. You're pro-life from the womb, the whole way to the tomb, through the whole span of life. We want to be pro-life. Yeah. I think when we think about ministering to kids and ministering to parents, that was an example where the kid's no longer in youth group. Yeah. She was a beautiful bride. Well, it was I love doing weddings. It was one of my favorite moments as a pastor in a wedding where it was a pure moment when she was walking down the aisle. And I was like, wow, now I'm telling these, I don't know, the 200 people, 300 people at the wedding about this Parent Connect meeting we had. And so back to the question, one per year, take some notes as we go, and then we can use them throughout. The reason notes are also helpful is, others might be smarter than me, but it's hard to keep details straight. Yeah. It's hard to keep memories of who said what, when, and what that all looked like. And I think that by taking notes, I might get into the year and be like, oh, what did they say? He plays basketball, so that's why I haven't seen him in a while. Things like that. That again, I think we have to be careful. You and I have to be careful because we're detail oriented. Yeah, we can't let the pendulum shift the whole way to the other end where we're over calculating everything. Yeah. But with that, Si, I had a question for you. This idea of connecting with parents is kind of like my baby. I love this. You
have a lot I that you've handed for me to hold.
I only have 2 real babies. So I hire you now over 5 years ago. The Lord has been kind that we've been able to work together. Yeah. You come into this and you hear that at the time Olivia was working with me, that we're doing these things called Parent Connect meetings. Yeah. And you hear me say, hey, I want you to start doing these with middle school. Can you just kind of walk through helping our listeners and those who are watching realize what did that look like for you to start and what suggestions I shared about going slow, realizing how important these are all, but what suggestions would you have for someone who's new?
Yeah, good question. It kind of that pro-life idea really helps you. It's pro for all of the life, but also helps you be present in their life too. Because that's the whole goal at the end of the day. We could take the best notes ever and use the best system to record all of our stuff. But if we're actually not showing up and being there and being genuine, the goal is this helps us towards that end. And so if it's not, then we need to question our motives and question if we're actually doing it right. But put all these things into practice with the goal of we actually want to present the kids mature, yes, the families mature in Christ, and continue with that generous ministry. So, your question was,
just when you started, like you come in and you hear this is happening.
Yeah, it's one of those where you're like, oh, that's not that complicated, but it makes so much sense.
Oh, the name Parent Connect meeting is so clear.
You want me to connect with parents? And that makes sense. But it's also once you get it may be nerve wracking at first. And literally, it was like, okay, I got to talk to parents that I don't even fully know yet. Yep. But so kind of as we already said, start with those that you know.
Yep.
Start with your maybe inner circle, maybe the students you already are familiar with, and the parents are already familiar with. Starting with that,
the pastors or elders and
starting
staff.
with the pastors and elders' kids, which are probably the most messed up anyways. Let's be honest. So,
can I tell a quick story about this? So there was an issue where kids in the youth group were messing up the choir music at our church.
Yeah.
And we were, it was like, the kids are doing something. And I said, I hope it's some of our pastor and elders' kids. And sure enough, it was. Yeah. And so then I told them, they're like, no, it wasn't them. I'm like, yeah. They're like, why would they do that? I'm like, because they're teenage boys.
Yeah.
So anyways, you said maybe start with the pastors or elders.
Start with those those are easy. And those can also understand what you're trying to do with it. And then be able to still make it your own.
Yep.
I think that was important to still see you run yours your way, but then also be able to say, hey, I'm still going to be me and still listen and ask questions and engage the parents and share a little bit, but hear more and listen more.
Kind of like the framework, episode 1, me and you and Marty talked about this trellis and the vine. Okay. This is a framework that then you build off of. Your point was helpful so I'm doing them, and then Olivia's doing them with high school students, or the parents of high school students. Yeah. Then we start doing them for middle school students.
Yeah.
And then we started doing them for kids ministry too. And I think that the flavor's going to look different meeting with a parent of a baby.
Yep.
Than a parent of a high school senior.
Yeah.
The underlying, or maybe a better way to say it, the root of the fears and all that might be the same, but it's going to look different from oh my goodness, I feel like I'm crazy because I just took my kid to the doctor for 3 times in 1 month, to the parent of a senior who's like, wow, my kid's going away to college, or I wish my kid was going away to college and isn't. It's going to look different. I think maybe a way to say this is the foundation of the Parent Connect meeting is the same.
Yes.
But the house will look different based on the age and based on the person. And that's why I believe God gave the church the plurality of elders, meaning God gave multiple elders to the church. In the youth ministry or the kids ministry setting, this is why a team is so important. This is why it's important to have both those who are leading and those who are volunteering come alongside the parents, because it's giving different perspectives. We're recording this, and basketball playoffs just ended last week. At least unless you're in the state championship or the Final Four. And one of my youth leaders who has been with the same group of boys, I think at least sophomore, junior, senior, if not the whole way up through, he went to the final 2 games that this kid had. Yeah. And it's incredible. This youth leader loves basketball. His son plays it wasn't like he was I'm sucking up and going to a dance recital. It was nothing against dance. I'm trying to say, my friend who's a youth leader, I can't imagine him going to a dance recital. But it's wow, I now have connected with these parents, and now this parent, the parents of this kid, I assume, see this youth leader here and are like, this is pretty cool.
And that's where, whether it's you're a volunteer or have volunteers, that's where they can start to help out and start to be a part of this in some sense.
Yeah, let's dive into that.
Put on that for a little bit more, because that's where, whether we have shared notes or you meet with that volunteer, but can you employ your volunteers? And that way, maybe you are a volunteer as the student worker, or maybe you have a network of volunteers that help. Can they involve? What does that look like? You give a little example earlier. But
I think
talk about that more.
The heartbeat behind this podcast is to equip youth pastors and volunteers to build biblical, sustainable, and contextual youth ministries. I think context is so important when we think about what ministering to parents looks like, because every church context is going to be different. So for someone who's listening or watching this right now, it might make total sense in their context to equip the volunteers to go talk to as many parents as possible.
Yeah.
that might not be wise in certain contexts. I'm thinking about if maybe there's a lot of kids coming who don't have parents that are Christians or aren't connected. So I think the context is important. I do think two things come to mind when we think of ministering to parents and how volunteers fit in. Number one, we've already touched on. Parents need as many people as possible to come alongside them. The cliche saying that the longer I'm a parent as my kids get older, I believe it's true, is it really does take a village. It takes a village to raise a kid. And so number one is just for youth volunteers to realize that they're actually not just there for the student, or even if they thought they were just at youth group for the student, really they're there for the parents too. And I think it works both ways. It works grassroots up, now by the youth volunteer pouring into the student. That's actually partnering with the parent. But it also gives the opportunity that as the parents then are processing with the kids what they're learning and what that looks like, it gives an opportunity actually if the parent would help the kid grow, and then without the kid realizing it, the kid's helping the parents grow, now that youth leader is actually influencing adults. So I just think that's important to think about. I think another thing to think about if there's a volunteer who is watching or listening this is just to realize that they as a volunteer can help the pastor reach more people. And maybe it's not reach more people because, again, maybe the parents are already coming to church. Let's just say can help the youth pastor or the main youth leader reach more people more effectively.
It's like and compounding and multiplying.
I think all the things we talked about is true. I make the joke, and it's not really a joke, that when I came to Old North Church about a decade ago, I never grew a beard before.
Oh, yeah.
And you can imagine this happening. Our pastors, it was like, oh, it's no shave November. Like let's all grow beard. And so I'm like, oh man, I never grew a beard before. And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And so anyways, I grew a beard, and now this is kind of a joke, but not a complete joke, that I think that when I grew a beard, all of a sudden I had more say with the parents because I think I looked older. I look much younger when I don't have a beard. And so I mean, I say this to those who are watching and listening. That sounds crazy, but I joke around, and I forgot. I've been saying that a lot in different training settings. And that I realized I said it at a training setting, and then I had a lunch with a youth pastor, and he's like, I'm like, oh, I grew a beard, and then parents started listening to me. He's like, yeah, I heard you say that before. But it's true.
Well, yeah.
And so I just think that that if the youth pastor is going to be able to minister to the parents, that's one thing. One of the longest tenured youth. He is the longest tenured youth leader we have at our church is a man in his 60s, Terry Kenny. He was on the search team when I came. I almost tear up thinking about just how faithful God has been to me through him. And like, he can speak differently to a parent than I can because he's experienced. Doesn't mean he's old. Sorry, Terry. Sorry. But he's experienced more life than I have. And so when I baptized a kid recently. This is so beautiful. I baptized a kid recently, and the dad, after I baptized the kid, brought up Terry and how the Lord has used Terry in the kid's life. Amen. And again, it's not a matter. I think when people think about partnering with parents and, we get phone calls or like literally, like we have calls with people about Parent Connect meetings. I don't think it's necessarily about prioritizing one thing over another. I think if we're going to do full and faithful ministry to students, it's got to include ministry to parents. And I think for me, and I think for you too, the longer we do ministry together, I think that it gives us an opportunity to realize, not in a prideful way that like, oh, I'm the most important pastor on staff, but it gives us an opportunity to realize, I'm not just the youth guy. Now, maybe someone's watching or listening to this and they think I'm the youth guy or the youth girl, and they feel like they get siloed off in the youth room, which hopefully if that's the case, you got a sweet youth room. But like, I think when we minister to parents, what it does for me is it helps me realize, you know what, this is worth it. It helps me realize, I think about a conversation I had with parents one year. Their son was struggling, and it was right around Christmas time. And my wife is so gracious, bought into this youth ministry thing and ministry in general. And something came up, and I remember the Christmas tree was set up in the other room. And I remember the lights were off, but the lights were on the tree. And she's like, "You need to go call that parent." And I remember going over in the other room, sitting by the Christmas tree, talking to this parent, and even now thinking about it, it's like, this is real life. Like, this is not only dodgeballs and lock-ins and decorating Christmas cookies. All of that is important. We talked about that. Teach, train, and time. The time's important. But like this phone call, even thinking about it now, this is showing me this is real life ministry. And I think so many in youth ministry don't realize that the way to get to a more full ministry is not just deeper ministry to the kids, but actually ministering to the parents.
Yeah, because you're empowering the church. Yep. That is taking that next step from and breaking down those silos that just naturally get built up to actually be the church and employ the church. All right. I got some roadblocks that could happen, some barriers that could happen to us doing this, and maybe we start turning the corner here. So can I give you just some of these barriers and you help us massage them out?
Let's go one at a time. I'll tell you what comes to mind.
And then we'll just either go quicker or, those questions definitely were not rapid fire. Shouldn't happen that way. All right, here we go. I don't have teenage children, so why would parents listen to me?
I think that if you're watching or listening to this and that's you, I think that's a real fear and a real roadblock. But I think that parents at times are so desperate that they're willing to accept anything. Now, that doesn't mean I've been in a situation before where I think that, especially before I even had kids, it's like, you don't know what you're talking. In one sense, like, even today, I don't know what it's like to have a teenager. But I spend most of my time with and studying teenagers that I feel like I have a voice. So I think if that's a critique that someone's getting, I would challenge them to, rather than try to do something they can't do, like being a 24-year-old trying to adopt a teenager, like that's probably not gonna be the solution. Actually, just raise the bar to help parents respect you more. That might mean dressing nicer on a Sunday morning. I'm not meaning wearing a suit. Maybe in your context that's important, but dress nicer, talk more appropriate. When you get an opportunity to preach in church, preach well. Like don't try to be the senior pastor, be the youth pastor. But all those things I think can help make up for not having teenagers.
So practical, so helpful, especially if it's like an inward mental barrier. Well, let's talk about maybe an outside one. Maybe whether it's perspective from other on staff or those that are above you, isn't it the senior pastor's role to care for parents where you just focus on the students? Whether that's coming from outside, maybe it's coming above. How do you overcome that barrier?
It might, because it might actually be coming from the church itself. It's possible they'll say, we don't want you to minister to parents. Like what I would say is, to cast the vision in your own mind first, because sometimes we always want to be leaders who lead by conviction, meaning what we believe drives our action. But sometimes we need to convince ourselves first. And so I would say cast the vision of the necessity to minister to parents to ourselves. And most churches are going to be okay if we minister to parents. Like most are going to be okay. And what I would say though is sometimes, especially when life gets busy and when ministry gets busy, it's like, and maybe someone's watching or listening thinking, we have an adult pastor at our church, or we have an associate pastor and that's not me, or I'm only 20 hours a week. Is, again, I would say, okay, if my goal is to make fully formed disciples, and I know the way to get there is by ministering to the parents too, let's work up to whatever that looks like rather than just throw in the towel. And I do think pride is a serious thing in this. I think sometimes youth ministers, including myself, can be like, oh, I'm the youth, like I go on these trips with the kids and I do all this, and what are all these other people doing? But I don't think God hates pride, and we need to make sure we're humbly following him. Man, would you add anything to that?
Oh, that's good. No, that was so good. So many truth bombs in that one. I got this other one that this may be a different barrier from a different angle. I'll just say it and then clarify maybe. Parents are too busy.
Yes.
Or simply don't prioritize this. Whether they initially, that the barrier might seem like it's from them saying they're too busy or saying they don't prioritize it. I would push back and be like, I don't know if they would say that, but let's for clarification, just understanding, say, talk about that barrier from the parent side.
I think that if maybe you cast the net wide, you're not throwing the fishing pole, you're casting that wide, and it's like
they even fish that way anymore.
This person never signed up for a Parent Connect meeting. I can't think of too many situations. I can't think of any off the top of my head where I've pursued a parent to meet and they never met with me. So I think a lot of times it's actually on our end. I think it's a stereotype. I know that parent's busy, but I think of a situation in our church where a family's very busy, but the parent will always meet with me. And I think I think also that's where, again, taking these serious and being able to say, you know what, when I meet and when I'm listening and when we're thinking about what this looks like, by doing them well, maybe this is what you could call, you hope that I'm coming up with this term right now, so I don't even know if I like it.
Toss it out.
Godly gossip. What I mean by that is you meet with a parent and they're like, wow, I just met with Pastor Sai and we had this really and all of a sudden bam, the next one wants to meet. I mean, that's where when people call us and they say, how do you do this? Or I'm at a panel. We were at the Rooted conference last year, and Jimmy Kim, I was in a family ministry cohort with Rooted, and he was leading a breakout. And I'm sitting in the back. He's like, Kyle in the back. And he's explaining what we do. And then through that, I got to know someone else, and we're talking about it. And but it's 8 years of setting the culture to make it normal for the youth workers and the kids workers to meet with the parents. That takes time, but it's worth it. And so that's how I think you get over the barrier of the parents are busy. You have to make it worth it. And I do just want to say, because we're talking a lot the why behind it, but practically, you don't have to fill this time with anything fancy, right? Update, ask how you can pray, think about what and in the end, usually I shoot for 45 minutes, but in the end, a busy parent will give 45 minutes.
Because on the negative side of parents already drop their experts off, or kids off to the experts of their sports or to their schooling. And so the negative side is oh, well, you're the spiritual expert, I'll just drop you off there, which that's the negative side of it. You could still lean into that on some level. And they probably, even if they have that perspective, at least being okay, they're busy, they're going to prioritize this, and they know this is important for their kids. So you can still be that voice, and they see that priority and will make time for the priority as you correct that understanding over time.
So that's one of the best things about being a youth pastor. So
the best things, that's pretty big.
I would say one of the best things about being a youth pastor is that parents realize that if my kid needs athletic help, I hire a trainer or a coach. If my kid needs academic help, I'm going to hire them a tutor. If my kid needs spiritual help, the downside might be the parent might be like, I'm not going to give. So let me go take my kid to the youth pastor. And sometimes it might be oh, well, can't you? But what an open door. And this is why I say it's one of the best things about being a youth pastor. If parents realize that they want to bring their child to meet with me or one of my youth leaders to talk about the most important things of life and eternity, and I can listen to their child, I can talk to their child, but now I can connect with the parents in order that one day we can present that child mature in Christ to Jesus himself. What more do I want to give my life to?
Boom. Wow. Just end it right there. Bada boom, bada bing.
Let's just talk about some resources real quick.
Yes, you turn the page, give us some resources. If someone wants to implement this and start, we're talking about a lot of little nuggets here, but what else? What other things they could have?
Yeah, I want to talk about this family ministry guide we made. First, just a few resources that can be helpful for listeners. One of the men who God has used to impact my life greatly and your life greatly, Dr. Walt Mueller, Center for Parent Youth Understanding. We have the first book he ever wrote, Ministry to Families with Teenagers. Wrote that a long time ago. Dr. Walt Mueller, Center for Parent Youth Understanding. There are if you go to their website, tons of resources, most of them free, that can be used to help facilitate these conversations. He has a podcast that is helpful. Also, there's the Rooted Parent podcast. Access Ministry has some helpful resources. And, there's just books like one book that we used is the Family Discipleship book by Adam Griffin and Matt Chandler. There's a podcast that goes along with it. But finding books like that, Paul Tripp is the one who writes a lot of books that are helpful in this avenue. But there's all of these resources that, again, we want to equip youth pastors and volunteers to build biblical, sustainable, and contextual youth ministries. These volunteers, all that I just mentioned, they can be helpful for you to build those three things: biblical, sustainable, and contextual. Now, one resource that we made here at Old North Church is this family ministry guide. For those who are watching or listening, if you actually send me an email, I'll put my email in the show notes, but if you send me an email at kyle@youthministryandthevine.com, if you send me that, I'll send you a copy of this family ministry guide. What we did is we built this guide to show all the different ways that we minister to birth through high school. And we have recommended resources. We actually, one of the first pages here, we have a sign up, a QR code where we explain what Parent Connect meetings are and where they can sign up right there for them so that it gives them an opportunity to know what's happening. And this is the type of thing we want to put in their hand at a Parent Connect meeting so that when they're doing that, they're able to know beyond, oh, did I hear it that way? Or what did that look like?
Would you say that's efficient?
I would say that's efficient. Hey, I want to know from you before we wrap this up. We've talked a lot about this, and I believe that the Lord has used you. Anything you would add to any of this?
It's kind of back to what we were talking about, the church being the church, and to start where to start where you're comfortable. And the priority of emphasizing it can't be overstated.
Yeah.
Because it's so easily neglected as youth workers.
Yep.
It's so much easier to just stick with the students or even the leaders, but to actually have that full circle youth ministry influence of students, leaders, and parents.
Yep.
And especially because parent meeting isn't entirely wrong, and maybe there's other ways.
And maybe in your context, the parent meeting
might work better or might work good. And the point being, you're chasing after parents, you're trying to connect with them with this whole purpose in mind of bridging those gaps and working on caring for these students together.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you who are watching and listening today are encouraged by this conversation, that we're thinking not just ministering to the students, but ministering to the students through ministering to the parents. I want to remind you, like I just shared, I'd love to send you a copy of this family ministry guide that we like to put in the hands of our parents. Another thing we did that we haven't mentioned is a couple years ago, similar to how building these Parent Connect meetings is building avenues for communication. So through emails, and we built what we call the family ministry wall at our church. We tried to find a place where most parents walk through, and we put these guides on the family ministry wall so people, even visitors to the church, can now know what that looks like. So I would love to email you. If you email me, I'll send you a copy in the mail. Again, you can email me, kyle@youthministryandthevine.com. Also, as we think about this important topic of ministering to parents, if you found this helpful, can you share this with a youth pastor friend of yours, or maybe your volunteer team? I know even Sai and I were talking this morning as we think maybe you're listening or watching this and you are one of our volunteers. We were just thinking, we want our volunteers to know how parents fit into ministering to the kids. So if you would subscribe, but also share this on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, whatever that looks like. Also want to remind you, lastly, that this podcast is made with things that I write about in the book, Youth Ministry and the Vine, that's coming out with Matthias Media. So in the show notes to this podcast, you'll find information on how you can purchase that book. And this is a book that was written with the heartbeat behind it as we are youth pastors and we want to equip more youth pastors. As if you've been watching or listening, we are far from perfect. Mexican does seem to make us think better. But today, as we think about this, episode 1 was Welcome to Youth Ministry in the Vine, the framework. Episode 2, Teach, Train, and Time. These is not like a food pyramid, but these are ingredients, like circles that overlap, that we want to have teaching, training, and time. Really, these Parent Connect meetings can be a mix of all, a lot of training and a lot of time, but at times will involve transferring knowledge to the parents and what that looks like. So thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to being with you next time.